powerful millionaire returns after 7 long years to visit the woman he once loved, only to uncover a secret she has protected with her life. A secret that will change both of their futures forever. Before we begin, leave a comment telling us which city you're watching from. And when the story ends, don't forget to rate it from 0 to 10. Take a deep breath, get comfortable, and enjoy the story. The black carriage came to a precise stop in front of the rusted fence of the farm. Daniel, dressed in a perfectly tailored suit with a serious expression, stepped out of the car, gripping the letter that had brought him here. It was an unsigned, handwritten letter with only one haunting sentence. "You need to see what you left behind." Those words burned in his mind, a provocation, a guilt he couldn't escape. He, the successful businessman with his empire and fortune, now stood on the land he swore never to set foot on again. But something in that letter had driven him to leave his life in Rio de Janeiro behind and cross the country, to this remote corner of the countryside. Something told him that here, in this place, there was more than he could ever have imagined. As Daniel walked toward the fence, the image of a woman appeared before him, working the land with strong, calloused hands. The soft light of the late afternoon illuminated her brown hair, now short and tied back in a scarf, and that's when he saw her Mara, his ex-wife. Her name echoed in his mind, a mixture of complicated feelings. She was the woman he had loved deeply, the woman he lost, the woman he had tried to forget. And here she was, in her essence, strong and independent, working alone in a simple, harsh life. Her smile, free of any pretense, didn't hint at anything wrong. She seemed happy with her land, with her child, with what he never could give her. Daniel felt small, ridiculous. Standing there in his designer clothes, while she was covered in dirt, strong, smiling with a kind of happiness he never had. Then she looked up. Smile faded the moment their eyes met. Time seemed to stop between them. Mara, with the same calm and strength she always had, set the hoe aside and crossed her arms. "So, the city prince is back," she said with irony in her voice. Daniel took a deep breath, trying to hold himself together. "Hi, Mara. It's been a while, hasn't it?" She didn't respond immediately. Instead, she took a step forward, eyeing him cautiously. 7 years to be exact, and now you show up. ... Why? Daniel hesitated for a moment, looking at the letter in his hands before finally speaking. "I got a letter." He paused, trying to find the weight of the words he was about to say. The letter said I needed to see what I left behind. Mara let out a bitter laugh. "What did you leave behind, Daniel?" she asked, her voice sharp. "You didn't leave anything. Not me, not anyone who stayed here. And that's all you need to know. There's nothing more here." He looked at her, trying to find a way to continue the conversation, but before he could say anything, a familiar sound from the house made him stop. In the distance, a small figure appeared at the window, watching him with curiosity. A little girl with red hair, pale skin, and gray eyes, the same eyes as his. He froze, the air leaving his lungs. Laya. He had never seen her before, but in his soul, he knew she was his daughter. Mara noticed his gaze, and with a stern expression, quickly turned to the little girl. "Leah, go inside now." Her voice was firm and commanding, echoing in the air. Daniel stood still, trying to process what he had just seen. He looked at Mara, who now had her back to him, and whispered, "Who is she?" Mara took a deep breath, the silence between them thick as a wall. When she finally spoke, her tone was cold. "That's none of your business, Daniel. The only thing you left behind was a trail of broken promises and a shattered heart. So, if you have any dignity, you should go back to your world and forget that you saw us here." Those words cut through him deeply. But even so, he forced himself to ask, "And what exactly do you expect me to do, Mara? Turn my back and go on with my life as if nothing ever happened?" She looked at him for a moment, her expression hardening. "I expect you to leave, once and for all." But before she could turn away, Daniel heard the soft, sweet sound of Laya laughing, a pure and innocent giggle. He turned, and in the window, Leah was watching him again. Her small hand pressed against the glass, curious, as if trying to figure out who this man was that had suddenly entered her life. Daniel's eyes were fixed on the little girl for a moment too long. His heart raced. She seemed so familiar, more than he cared to admit. Adrian, homem de estatura media.com, cabello, costanjo, escuro, y ligeramente, baguncado, y ojos, verdes. USA rupes, cagua de sudate, como camisa de batallo, y calcas, de sarja, adequadas, para, un estilo, urbano. Adrian couldn't get the image of Leah out of his mind. She was there at the window, looking at him with those gray eyes, and an odd but clear feeling washed over him. He had to return to the farm and confront Mara to learn more about the girl and what had really happened over the past years. However, things didn't start well when he arrived. Mara was in the yard, trying to organize a pile of wood near the small shack where she lived. When Adrian saw her, she looked even more distant, with her hair messy from work and the usual expression, harsh and distrustful. She turned her head when she heard him approaching but didn't bother hiding her frustration. "You again," she said almost sarcastically. "Did you think you could convince me with what? With that city prince look?" Adrian stopped at the entrance to the yard, scratching the back of his neck, unsure of how to begin the conversation. He knew she didn't want him there, but something inside him told him he had to try. "Mara, I'm not here to argue," he began, a bit hesitant. I need to understand what happened. The girl. You know who I'm talking about, don't you?" Mara looked at him with a mix of exhaustion and indignation. She didn't respond immediately, but before she could say anything, Adrian took the initiative to move closer, trying to break down the wall between them. "I just need to know, Mara." He tried to explain, but his words sounded empty. "I regret not being there." She raised her hand, cutting him off. "Regret? Really? Now you come here telling me you regret it?" After all this time, she paused and let out a tired sigh. "Now that everything is different, you want to show up?" Adrian tried to think of something to say, but the truth was, he was lost, didn't know how to fix what was broken. What he knew was that, when he saw that girl for the first time, he felt something inside of him, something he couldn't identify. To try to ease the situation, he decided to help. He thought that by doing something, by working alongside her, maybe the ice between them would melt. "Let me help with this," he said, pointing to the scattered wood on the ground. "I know how to do this." Mara raised an eyebrow, looking at him with skepticism. "You? Really?" She laughed, almost incredulously. "You're going to help me stack wood?" Adrian smiled awkwardly, trying to hide his insecurity. "Yeah, I will. Don't worry." He crouched down and tried to pick up the wood, but as he attempted to lift it, the pile fell on him, causing him to lose his balance and nearly fall flat on his back. "Great. Excellent start, Adrian," Mara remarked, crossing her arms and letting out a dry laugh. He tried again, this time more carefully, but just as he tried to balance the pile of wood on his back, he tripped over a root in the ground, causing the wood to fall once more, scattering all over the place. "I think I'm not cut out for this," he mumbled, laughing at himself. "I've never been good with this stuff." Mara couldn't help but let out a small laugh, though she quickly tried to disguise it. Not wanting to admit she found the scene somewhat amusing. "Apparently not," she replied, still chuckling quietly. However, this brief moment of levity quickly dissipated when they exchanged a look. One of those looks heavy with unspoken weight, full of memories. A silent exchange of vulnerabilities and regrets. Adrian took a deep breath and tried again, this time more calmly, beginning to organize the wood with more care. He moved closer to Mara, now serious, and couldn't help but ask, "Mara? The girl, she? You know what happened to her, don't you?" Mara stared at him with hardness, not hesitating. But before she could respond, she shook her head as though she already knew what he was going to say. "I'm not answering that, Adrian." "Not now," she said firmly. "I did everything on my own. Honestly, I don't need your help or your questions right now." He felt the weight of her response, and for a moment, he stood in silence, looking at the pile of wood he had just tried to organize. She had pushed him away again. But something inside him refused to give up. He knew he had to find a way to get closer, to discover the truth. Adrian woke up early the next morning, the weight of the previous day still on his mind. But something urged him to leave the house and walk toward the field, where the plants and trees surrounding the farm seemed to be the only constant in this emotional whirlwind. As he approached the small pond, he heard a soft, childlike laugh. Moving closer, he saw Leah sitting at the edge, playing with some stones she had picked up from the water. She was alone, absorbed in her little game, with a genuine smile on her face. And her presence there felt natural, as if she were the owner of the land, as if she belonged there. Adrian hesitated. He knew he shouldn't approach, that there was still so much left unsaid, but something inside him compelled him to walk toward the little girl. What he felt didn't make sense. She was just a child. But at the same time, there was something about her that made him feel connected in a way he couldn't explain. When she noticed him, she looked up, her large gray eyes meeting his for a brief moment. She seemed curious, but not frightened. When she spoke, her voice was calm and innocent. "Who are you?" she asked, with the simplicity of a child. Adrian crouched down, trying to approach without being intrusive. He smiled, attempting to mask the growing tension in his chest. "I'm Adrian, and you?" he replied softly. "Leah," she said, pointing to herself. The way she said her name made Adrian feel an ache in his heart. It was as if he already knew, without fully knowing, that Leah had something of him, something deep, something he couldn't yet understand. "Do you live here?" he asked, with a light smile, trying to understand more about the girl and her relationship with the farm. Leah nodded, as if the question was obvious. "Yes, I live here with my mom. She teaches me everything. I know how to plant, how to harvest. Do you know how to do these things?" She seemed so proud, like the teacher, and he was the student. Adrian chuckled softly. The scene was endearing, but something inside him quietly hurt. This girl, so bright, so spontaneous, so much like him. "I've never been good at these things," he said with a wry smile. "But maybe you could teach me one day." Leah smiled back, and for a moment, the tension between them faded. But just as the moment of lightness passed, the sound of footsteps approaching them broke the silence. Adrian turned and saw Mara walking toward them, her face immediately hardening when she saw him there with Leah. Her expression turned cold, and her gaze became icy. "What's going on here?" Mara asked, her voice low but filled with anger. "What are you doing with my daughter?" The word "my" cut through the air like a blade. Adrian froze. I knew it wasn't right to be there, but Mara's explosive look, now filled with uncontrollable fire, made everything worse. "I was just talking to her, Mara. It's nothing." Adrian tried to explain, but the tension was already at its peak. "Nothing. You think I'm blind?" She exploded, her words coming quickly and sharply. "You don't get to come here, Adrian. You don't get to be part of our life now." She stepped forward, pushing him away from Leah with a rough gesture. "I warned you, didn't I?" Mara continued, anger pouring out. "Now you need to leave, and I don't ever want to see you here again." Leah looked at her mother, confused but not fully understanding what was happening. She had no idea why Adrian's presence made her mother so upset. But seeing her mother so agitated, she quietly stepped back, unsure of what to do. Adrian stood there for a few seconds, paralyzed as Mara pushed him away from the property. He knew he couldn't insist any longer. He didn't know how, but Mara's outburst was something unsustainable. He had to leave. When he turned his back on Mara, he felt a weight in his heart. He wanted to stay, wanted to fight for Leah, but he felt like he had already lost that battle before it even began. As Adrian walked away from the farm, Mara's rage still echoing in his ears, an unexpected visitor arrived at her home. A large company had come forward, offering an enormous sum for the farm. They were willing to buy the land at any cost, claiming it was for a large development project in the area. The offer was irresistible, and while Mara tried to resist, the weight of the proposal was too strong to ignore. The mystery deepened. The farm, the place where it all began, where Adrian still felt an inexplicable connection, was now under threat. And he didn't know what to do about it. Mara looked at the letter with the terms of the offer once again, a bitter smile forming on her lips. She knew the temptation was great, but at the same time, she didn't want to sell the one thing that still gave her any sense of meaning. She looked out the window where Leah was playing with the animals in the field. No, she thought. I won't let anyone destroy this. The night fell quietly over the farm, but the sky quickly filled with dark, heavy clouds. The wind began to blow hard, making the trees sway violently. Adrian, who had stayed inside the house until that moment, looked out the window and felt a tightness in his chest. He knew this storm wouldn't be any ordinary one. Sound of the rain, now pouring heavily, mixed with the crack of thunder in the distance. It didn't take long for lightning to flash across the sky, lighting up the farm in intense bursts. The thunder followed immediately, rumbling like a warning that something worse was coming. Adrian went to the door, looking out into the dark, and then he heard the first screams. "Adrian," Mara's voice echoed, frantic. "The barn. The barn." He ran to the door, and as soon as he stepped outside, he saw that the barn, which housed the hay and the animals, was on fire. The flames had already consumed the roof, and thick smoke spread through the air. Adrian ran toward the fire without thinking, without hesitating. The torrential rain fell, but it wasn't enough to put out the fire that quickly spread. Mara was already there, her face filled with panic, running around trying to save the animals. She was soaked, her makeup smeared from the effort and fear. "Mara," Adrian yelled, moving toward her. "We need to get the animals out fast. I don't have time. They're locked inside." She replied, her voice trembling with panic. "I can't do this alone." Adrian didn't hesitate. He ran to the barn where the animals were trapped. The walls were slowly breaking down due to the fire, and he knew time was running out. He grabbed the first cow, helped it out of the barn, and soon Mara appeared with more, her face showing pain and frustration. "Let's go fast," he shouted, pulling another animal out. The fire was intensifying, and the flames started getting closer to them. The situation was becoming more desperate. Suddenly, the wind picked up, knocking down a beam from the barn that almost hit Adrian. He barely managed to dodge it, but the wood slammed into the ground beside him with a deafening crash. Mara screamed as the beam nearly struck him, but he was more focused on getting the animals out.
Ow.
The tension was palpable with every movement, each one more dangerous than the last. When they finally managed to get the last of the animals out, the barn collapsed with a thunderous roar. Both of them fell to the ground, panting, their bodies exhausted and soaked from the rain and sweat. The silence that followed was deep and heavy, broken only by the relentless rain and the distant sound of the fire burning. Adrian sat on the ground, his breathing heavy, staring at Mara. She was trembling, her eyes fixed on a point far away, as if she didn't know what to do next. We did it," Adrian said, his voice hoarse, still trying to catch his breath. Mara didn't respond immediately. She was pale, shaking, and then suddenly, the weight of the situation hit her. Without warning, she threw herself into his arms, holding him with an unexpected strength. I don't know what to do," Mara murmured, her voice soft and broken. "I can't lose all of this. I can't lose everything again." The gesture was impulsive, and suddenly, they were there, holding each other in the middle of the storm, with the rain pouring heavily over them. The adrenaline was fading, and all that remained was the vulnerability between them. "It's not going to happen, Mara. I'll help," Adrian said softly, his hand gently rubbing her back, trying to offer calm, though he was on the verge of breaking down emotionally. "I won't let you lose this."
Yes!
The embrace lasted longer than he expected. Both of them were exhausted, filthy, and drenched, but in that moment, something deeper connected them. The distance between them, built over years of hurt and secrets, seemed to melt away slowly. But when Mara pulled away, her eyes were filled with unshed tears, as though she was about to say something important, something that could change everything. She opened her mouth to speak, but at the last moment she hesitated, closing her eyes as if she was holding back from something even more painful. "No?" she whispered, as though holding herself back.
What?
The tension was back in the air, more palpable than ever. Adrian wanted to say something, ask her what she was about to say. But Mara was already pulling away, as though vulnerability was something she couldn't bear. "I'll take care of it," she said firmly, trying to regain her composure. But the emotional impact was still there, hanging between them, without words, without explanations. Little Laya. The storm passed, but with it came chaos. The next morning, the farm was devastated. The barn, once the center of so many memories, was now just a pile of rubble. But there was something even more worrying. Laya was lying in bed, sweating and breathing heavily. Her temperature was sky-high, and Mara, not knowing what to do, was frantic. "She needs to go to the hospital," Adrian suggested, worried as he watched Mara panic. I'll take her. I'll find a way. Mara looked at Laya, and the fear in her eyes was unmistakable. She knew she was losing control, but at the same time, there was something inside her, something that still resisted accepting Adrian's help. But in that moment, she knew she needed him. Now, she said, her voice trembling. Take her. Adrian picked Laya up in his arms, with Mara right behind him. The future of the farm was uncertain, and they knew more challenges lay ahead. But for now, the only thing that mattered was Laya. The hospital environment was tense, almost oppressive. The white walls and cold hallways reflected the gravity of the moment. Leah was finally stable, but the shadows of what had happened still hung in the air. Mara, visibly exhausted, hadn't left her daughter's side since they arrived. Her eyes, however, seemed empty, distant, as though a part of her was still lost in the past. Adrian stood in the hallway, his hands sweating as he gripped the wall, needing something solid to hold himself up. The doctor passed by him, seeing the expression of worry and regret on Adrian's face. What happened to her? Adrian asked, his eyes pleading for an explanation, as if it were his last chance to understand what was going on. She had a strong reaction to the stress from the storm, the doctor explained, but she's recovering. I would say the biggest risk now is emotional. He paused, looking at Adrian with a somber expression. You're her father, right? Adrian froze for a moment, the question echoing in his mind. Before he could answer, Mara appeared at the end of the hallway, her eyes avoiding the conversation. Is she okay? She asked, trying to remain calm, though her voice betrayed her fear. She glanced at Adrian but seemed unwilling to face him directly. The doctor nodded affirmatively, but before he could give more details, the tension in the air became palpable. Adrian stepped toward Mara, but she hurriedly turned away, starting to walk quickly. Mara, wait. He called out, his voice louder than he intended. She stopped, but wouldn't face him. The silence between them was as heavy as the storm still raging outside. I know what you're trying to do, Adrian, Mara said, her words cutting sharply. But it won't change anything. Adrian moved closer, now standing right in front of her, his eyes wide with pain and confusion. He needed to know. He couldn't live with the uncertainty anymore. Mara, I just need to know what happened. About Leah? About everything? He pleaded, his voice breaking at the end. I know you hate me, but you have to tell me. I need to understand. The silence was deafening. But finally, Mara took a deep breath, as if bracing herself for the worst. Do you really want to know, Adrian? She asked, her eyes finally meeting his. But there was something more there now, something she had been hiding for so long. Yes, I need to know, Adrian replied, his voice steady, despite the rising pain in his chest. Mara closed her eyes, and with a heavy sigh, the truth started to spill out. I was pregnant when you left me, she said, her voice trembling but resolute. Twins. She paused, tears starting to form in her eyes. The boy. He didn't survive the birth. He died. Adrian. She took a deep breath, as if every word was cutting deeper. I didn't know what to do. I was alone, in pain, with no one, and I wrote so many letters to you, so many. But they never got delivered. No one delivered them. Adrian felt as if the ground had just opened beneath him. The weight of Mara's words crushed him in a way he couldn't process. He backed away, his face pale, breath coming in short gasps. You wrote to me, he whispered, the pain in his eyes unbearable. I didn't know, Mara. I didn't know. Mara said nothing. She only stared at him, her expression drained of all hope. It was as though all the words had already been spoken, but there was no going back. I'm such an idiot, Adrian murmured, trying to hold back tears. I failed you. I failed our family. Mara closed her eyes, trying to control the pain that seemed to swallow everything around her. She wanted to scream, but at the same time, there was a crushing quietness inside of her. She didn't know what to do with all of this. I don't know if I can forgive you, Adrian, she said, her voice breaking. I don't know. I lived all this time, alone. I raised Leah alone, and you just disappeared. Adrian stepped closer slowly, but he hesitated. He didn't know if he could do anything to fix what was broken between them. Something inside him urged him to take one more step. I'm so sorry, Mara. I'm so sorry. I can't undo it, but... He took her hand, his gaze full of regret. I'm here now. I'll try with everything I have to be the man you need. Mara looked at him for a long moment, and once again, silence filled the space between them. The words were there, but something stopped them from being said. She looked down, the tears streaming down her face. I don't know if I can, she whispered, her voice cracking. Before Adrian could speak again, they heard a small cough from the doorway. Laya was there, still feverish, her expression confused as she looked at them both. Mommy, Leah murmured, walking slowly toward them. I'm okay now. I'll be okay, right? Adrian looked at the girl, and for the first time, he realized there was something even more important he needed to do, not just to fix what was between him and Mara, but to be the father Laya deserved. Morning broke over the farm, but Adrian's peace was short-lived. His phone buzzed with an unexpected message. A meeting had been scheduled with the company that was pressuring Mara to sell her land. Adrian had already suspected something more sinister behind the offer, but now he understood the full extent of the threat. The meeting was set at a secluded office downtown, where Cassian, Vale Adrian's corporate rival, was waiting. Cassian was a man of cold, calculated moves. A powerful figure in the business world, he had once been Adrian's partner until a bitter rivalry tore them apart. Now Cassian had more than just business interests in mind. He was determined to crush Adrian, and he had just found his weapon. When Adrian entered the sleek conference room, Cassian was waiting, a smirk playing on his lips. The glass walls of the room reflected the city outside. Cassian, impeccably dressed, exuded an air of superiority. Adrian. It's been a long time. Cassian's voice was smooth, but there was something dark behind his eyes. Cut the crap, Cassian. I know what you're up to. Adrian replied, his voice tight, barely containing the anger building inside him. Cassian leaned back in his chair, his fingers steepled together, the subtle smile never leaving his face. Well, I think you know exactly what I'm doing, Cassian said, his smile sharp. I'm trying to acquire what you've failed to protect for years. You've been distracted, Adrian. Be a little too distracted by things that don't belong in the boardroom. He let the words hang in the air, knowing they stung. Adrian's heart sank as the meaning became clear. Cassian had discovered Mara and Laya, and he intended to use that against him. You're threatening them now, Cassian? Adrian said, his voice harsh, his fists clenched. Oh, not exactly threatening, Cassian replied casually. But it's amazing what a little information can do, isn't it? I've learned a lot about your personal life. About Mara. About the little girl you've been playing daddy to. He leaned forward, his gaze cold. I'm sure your reputation would suffer greatly if that little detail got out, wouldn't it? A CEO with a secret family? A farm? And a child that isn't even yours? Adrian felt the room close in on him. His past with Mara had been a wound too deep to touch, and Cassian was now using it as a weapon. You're sick, Cassian, Adrian snarled, rage in his eyes. But I won't let you destroy them. Cassian's smile never faltered. He now knew Adrian's weakness, and that was enough to secure his victory. Adrian spent the next few days in a frenzy, determined to stop Cassian's attempt to seize the farm. He knew that without evidence, Mara wouldn't believe him, and even if she did, there was no guarantee the deal could be stopped. He dug through Cassian's company's books, analyzing financial documents, contracts, and hidden transactions. It didn't take long for Adrian to uncover something horrifying: fraudulent dealings. Underdayball deals with fake companies, and embezzlement schemes that extended far beyond just the land acquisition. Gotcha, Adrian muttered to himself, staring at the incriminating documents in front of him. He immediately contacted his lawyer, getting ready to confront Cassian head-on, but first he needed to warn Mara. And that afternoon, Adrian stormed into Cassian's office once again, documents in hand, and everything ready to destroy Cassian's plans. The moment Cassian saw Adrian enter, his expression shifted, recognizing that his victory was slipping through his fingers. You're making a mistake, Cassian, Adrian said, throwing the pile of fraudulent documents onto the table between them. Cassian's calm demeanor faltered for a brief moment as he scanned the papers. He didn't say a word, but the flicker of panic in his eyes was all Adrian needed to see. You think you can destroy me with some papers? Cassian sneered. You've lost already. No, Cassian. Adrian's voice was low, filled with finality. You've lost. You just don't know it yet. The legal battle had begun, and Adrian had no intention of backing down. But as the dust settled and the legal documents were filed, something inside Adrian began to shift. The chaos of the fight, the betrayal of his past, and the overwhelming emotions he had been trying to suppress had finally caught up with him. When he returned to the farm, the first thing he noticed was Mara's distance. She wasn't there to greet him as she normally would, and when he entered the house, she was sitting by the window, staring out at the horizon. "Mara," Adrian said softly, unsure of how to begin. She didn't turn to him, her expression unreadable. "I did it," he said, taking a step forward. "Cassian won't take the farm. It's over." Mara stayed silent for a long moment. Finally, she turned to face him, but her eyes were guarded, distant. "I don't know, Adrian," she said quietly. "I don't know if I can trust you anymore." Adrian's heart sank. He had fought for her, for their family, but it wasn't enough. Mara's pain was still too fresh, and her fear of being left alone again was too strong. "Mara, please." "I'm not going anywhere," Adrian said, walking toward her. "I'm here for good. But how can I be sure, Adrian?" She finally spoke, her voice full of vulnerability. "Every time you say that, I start to believe it, and then you leave." He took a step toward her, but she recoiled slightly, as if instinctively pulling away. "You're fighting Cassian, but you're not fighting me," she whispered, her voice full of quiet pain. "You're going to leave again, just like before?" Adrian stood there, unable to respond, the weight of her words sinking in. Despite everything he had done to prove himself, the fear of abandonment was still too deep inside her. Adrian stood alone in his office, staring at the screen of his phone, his thumb hovering over the number of his attorney. He hesitated only for a moment before a quiet certainty settled inside him. The decision was made. There was no turning back. He would leave behind the life he once fought so hard to build, the luxury, the prestige, the endless meetings, and return to the only place that had ever felt real, Willow Creek. For Mara, for Laya, for the family he had lost before ever realizing what he had. He finally pressed the call button. "Sell my share of the company," he said, his voice steady. His attorney tried to object, reminding him of contracts and numbers and consequences, but Adrian interrupted, unshaken. "I've decided I'm staying in Willow Creek, and I want you to start the paperwork to buy the farm. Put everything under Mara's name." When he hung up, his chest loosened, as if a massive weight had been lifted. For the first time in years, he felt free. Free from the glossy cage of city life. Free to choose what truly mattered. Free to love without hesitation. The following days carried a different rhythm. Adrian worked alongside Mara in the fields, learning to mend fences, feed animals, and repair what a storm in life had broken. He came home with dirt under his nails and scrapes he hadn't earned in a lifetime of boardrooms. Yet he felt more himself than he had in years. Every gesture, every effort, was a quiet apology. A promise. Proof that he wasn't there to repeat the past, he was there to rebuild the future. Mara watched him from a distance, her guard still present, but cracking. Little by little, the land seemed to heal them both. One warm summer afternoon, as the sun dipped behind the rolling hills, Adrian and Mara stood on the farmhouse porch, watching Leah run across the grass with carefree laughter. The golden light touched everything gently, the fences, the fields, Mara's hair as it danced in the breeze. Adrian turned toward her, his expression soft, but filled with depth she had never seen from him before. "Mara, I know I can't erase the past, and I know words won't ever be enough. But everything I've done, everything I'm doing, is to show you how much I've changed. How much you and Leah have become the center of my life." He paused, glancing toward the little girl hopping across the yard. "I love you. I love both of you. And I'm not going anywhere. Not ever again." Mara held his gaze, her eyes shining with unspoken emotions, a small, trembling smile surging in her lips. "I love you too, Adrian. I didn't know any more what to feel. Maybe I do now." Just then, Leah ran toward them, stopping dramatically with her hands on her hips. "I'm the Cupid of this family," she announced proudly. "I told you to stop fighting. Now we're all happy." Adrian and Mara laughed together, the kind of laughter that felt like relief, like a new beginning. The weight between them had finally softened. The fields were bathed in amber light when they walked together through the tall grass. The sky, painted in hues of gold and crimson, stretched endlessly above them. Adrian slowed his steps, his heart pounding with a certainty he had never felt before. He turned to Mara, took her hands gently, and then knelt in the soft earth. Lia gasped somewhere behind them, but Adrian's eyes were locked only on Mara's. "Mara," he murmured, emotion thick in his voice. "You've given me more than I deserve. You showed me what truly matters. And now, all I want is to spend the rest of my life by your side." He smiled, steady and sure. "Will you marry me?" Mara's breath caught. Her eyes glistened as she looked at him, then at the land around them, then at Lia, watching with barely contained excitement. When her gaze returned to Adrian, everything was clear. "Yes," she whispered, her voice full of warmth. "Yes, Adrian, will." He rose, pulling her into a tight embrace, and their kiss came naturally, tender and full of promise. Lia ran into their arms moments later, giggling as the three of them held on to one another beneath the glowing sky. The farm, once a place of wounds and silence, now felt like the home they were building together. And now, dear listener, it's your turn. What did you think of this story? Leave a comment below, give it your rating, and don't forget to subscribe for more emotional journeys like this one. Your opinion means everything.